All right, today is September 12th, 2019. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. As a reminder, this meeting is recorded, public, and posted on YouTube. Today we have a lot of things on the agenda. We're going to start off by doing a quick review of the items that the SIG worked on for Q3 for the 1.16 Kubernetes release. And we're going to get an end of quarter status on what features made it, what features didn't make it. And then next time in 2 weeks, we're going to start our Q4 planning. So if there are items that you want the SIG to work on, keep an eye out for an email I'm going to send once I create a new spreadsheet or a new sheet inside the spreadsheet for next quarter. And we can get started reviewing that next time. So let's jump into our planning sheet and start going through the items and get an end of quarter status. All right, so first item is CSI migration to beta. And anybody want to give a end of quarter status here?
Yeah, so we decided not to go to beta because none of the drivers were ready to go to beta. And it made sense that if we do want to go to beta, at least we have one of the drivers in beta shape. So while a lot of the work was completed, we decided to hold up beta till 1.17.
Okay. Most of the work was completed though.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. That is a lot of work. So thank you for that. End of quarter status. Next item is CSI online offline resizing. Volume expansion to beta. Haman?
I believe him and Son PTO today.
Okay. Anyone else able to give an update?
Yeah, I can give an update on this. The main thing remaining is to release a new external Resizer sidecar. Haman is in the progress of getting the sidecar E2E tests up and running with the new release. But all the entry work is done.
Okay. So it looks like it's on track for next couple of weeks before lunch. So we'll keep that marked as started. Thank you, Michelle. Next item is the CSI mount library. Travis? Michelle, do you want to give an update for Travis?
Yeah, there was really good progress made here. We were not able to complete everything yet, but I think we are in very good shape to get it done in 1.17.
Cool, thank you. And this one should be done. And this one we're going to move to 1.17.
So at 1.17, the idea is we should have that separate mount library, right? Like out of entry, pretty much?
Correct. So that way CSI drivers don't have to import all of Kubernetes just to get the mount library.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, next item is per node volume attach limits, which was designed to be refactored or redone this quarter. Either Jan or Haman. Any updates on this? So last status update we had here was there were end-to-end tests being added. So I believe this is complete.
Yeah, this is done. We added end-to-end tests, and they're currently running for the CSI mock driver. They're not running for any of the plugins right now because it's actually like the test takes way too long with real plugins.
Okay.
But I think one thing we can maybe look at next release is to see if we can modify the test a little bit to not be so aggressive in attaching all the volumes all at once.
Okay. Seems like a good idea. Next item is block volume support. Work here was we're going to keep it in beta, but do some stress testing and fix some known issues. Brad, Ben, any updates on this?
Some known issues have been fixed, and some known issues are remaining for 117.
Okay.
It's a board you can track.
Okay. And then in 117, do you think we should move to GA or keep it in?
I would definitely like to have a GA.
Okay.
If possible.
Okay, so once we do 117 planning, we can move this item there and talk about what the remaining work is.
Mm-hmm.
Next item is scalability testing. Any updates on this?
I don't have any new things for this.
Okay.
We are still waiting for the test infra team to enable cluster-wide test cases of ephemeral volumes.
But the per node, the single node tests are running.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I believe, and all of this is for the ephemeral volume tests.
Yep.
We did do work to add tests for the some persistent volumes, but I think that's going to need some more tuning and work before we can actually enable those by default.
That makes sense. So a lot of good work, and we'll move this over to next quarter to get more progress. Next item is volume snapshot namespace transfer design. I don't think we made any progress on this. John, are you on the line by any chance? Okay, I'm going to mark this as not started. Next item is a new design for volume file permission handling. And then along with that is revisiting UID GID handling and file permissions for Windows. Anyone want to give updates on any of those three items? I'm going to mark these as no progress unless someone disagrees. Please speak up. Okay. Next item is volume expansion for stateful sets. This was a SIG Apps project that we were helping shepherd, specifically Hemant. Hemant, any updates on this? Oh, Hemant's not here today. So last status was KEP has been LGTM'd and approved, needs API reviewer, relaxing PVC validation. So I think the status here was started. And then implementation in 117. All right, next item is CSI Volume Health, which is also a design. by Nick Wren, guided by Xing. Xing, any updates on this?
No update. Still waiting for some reviews. We probably should set up some meetings so people can take a look at that.
Okay, so there is a cap out, but it needs to be reviewed. So I think we can mark this as started and move it to next quarter, and maybe keep it in design depending on how far along it is. Next item is read-only handling for CSI entry. No progress on this. We will move this to 1.17. Next item is CSI spec alpha beta GA designation. We had a number of items go into the CSI spec for what is effectively going to be CSI 1.2. None of those items required an alpha beta GA designation because they're not new features. So we're going to punt this to 1.17. If there are new features that pop up, we will apply an alpha beta designation to those. Next item is the storage proxy for Windows. Deep made a lot of great progress on this. Deep, do you want to give an update?
Yeah, so the entry portion, which was pretty simple, got done, and we got some good end-to-end tests with it using the GCP file store driver by Peter Horniak. So that piece was working, but that was not containerized. So for the containerized piece, the proxy is definitely in progress, but not anywhere near completion for 1.16.
Okay. And sorry, so you were saying this is a standalone executable right now?
Correct. It's in a separate repo.
Okay. And then in 1.17, do you anticipate this would be alpha or beta or?
So I think we will try to hit an alpha for the proxy in 1.17.
Okay, seems reasonable. Next item was Snapshots to beta. This was also started. A lot of great work went into this. Maybe Xing or Sean, if one of you are on the lines.
Yeah, so we are continuing this work. Hopefully we can get the API PR merged soon, because all the other PRs are dependent on it.
Cool. So I think we anticipate that this should land pretty early in the next quarter. Yeah. Next item is volume cloning. This was completed. John has an item to write up a blog post about the beta. And he's working on that at the moment. Next item is ephemeral CSI volumes, inline volume support, moving that to beta. Patrick or Michelle, any updates on that?
This is done. I think the only thing outstanding is documentation on the CSI side.
Okay. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and mark that as done. Next item is CSI Topology, prepping for GA. Any updates here?
Work has started to get this done in 1.17.
Perfect. Next item is CSI Driver prep for GA. Updates there?
No update.
Same as the other item here, work started to complete in 117?
I'm actually not sure anything has been done.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so we'll mark that as not started, and then we'll move that over to 117. Next item is improving CSI metrics. This was a design for this quarter. Last status update was the design was under review. Any updates on that? Is it fair to say there's going to be a cap for 117?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is execution hooks for application snapshot. Xing was working on that. We need to sync up with SIG Apps for this. So maybe for next quarter, we try to get a kind of joint task here. Xing, does that sound right?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Okay. Next item is addressing this CSI PVPVC code issue. We never got an owner for this, so move it along on the backlog. The rest of these were P3 asks for the quarter. Let's see what the progress here is. So volume group API design, we did not make progress on that. Next item is generic data populator. There was a design that was put out by John. I got some feedback, needs more discussion. I anticipate this will be one of the things that we'll want to talk about at the face-to-face meeting whenever we plan to do that. Next item is 3 items, CSI drivers, one for NFS, one for iSCSI, one for Fiber Channel. For NFS and iSCSI, the drivers already have their own repo. The task was to add image building, testing, CI/CD, documentation, etc. And then for Fiber Channel, it was to move it into a separate repo. So we never got owner, so we're going to move these 3 items to next quarter. And for folks that are on the line, if you're interested in helping with any of this, we're going to do planning in a couple of weeks. That'll be a good time to jump in to say, hey, this is something I'm interested in helping out with. Next item is post-GA entry topology. This was being moved to 117 as well. And then CSI out of tree, move flex driver to a separate repo. We were looking for a volunteer to complete the work. So this got started, but and then finally, this was co-owned by SIG Apps, improving the stateful set experience for when you delete a stateful set. We did not get updates on this from the owner here. Gary, are you on the line by any chance? Okay. Okay. So highlights for this quarter that got completed: volume cloning moving to beta, the ephemeral inline volume support for CSI moving to beta, the attach limits. Sorry, go ahead. And then online, offline volume resizing for CSI to beta. So a lot of the CSI features are moving over to beta, so good progress there. A lot of work that's pending, and this is normal. We have lots of very large items, so they tend to span multiple quarters. Hopefully the yellow items we can make some progress on next quarter and move some of the reds to yellow. So thank you all for the hard work. Upcoming dates to be aware of: 16th is when the release is going to be cut, and then we'll start discussing the next release. Moving on, we have a handful of miscellaneous items. Joshua reached out on Slack. He wanted to present the cert manager, a CSI driver. Josh, do you want to set the stage and take over?
Sure, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, my name's Josh. I work at JetStack. I'm here with James, and we work on Cert Manager. Guess if you're not too familiar, it's an operator in Kubernetes to automate TLS certificates. And we're doing quite a bit of work recently to kind of increase the kind of integration points with kind of other parts of Kubernetes. So this involved kind of creating a new resource, kind of intermediary between like a certificate to a certificate request. Yeah, and this has allowed us to kind of enable people to do kind of out of tree issuers rather than just kind of in tree stuff. But it's also enabled us to kind of play around with things like a CSI driver, which I've been kind of looking into. So yeah, I'll give a little demonstration here. So I've got Cert Manager installed here with the CSI driver, and I can deploy like an example application here. And I'm making use of the new kind of inline volume mount as well, which is pretty cool. So what's happening here is they kind of send off these volume attributes to the kind of Cert Manager CSI driver. The CSI driver is going to kind of create this certificate request resource. Cert Manager, the operator, is going to kind of resolve that certificate. The CSI driver grabs the certificate and then writes it to file, which is pretty cool. It means that we can kind of generate private keys locally on the node, store them locally on the node. They never leave. Yeah, and it's all kind of local on file, which is quite cool. You also get this kind of nice property where, of course, because it's a volume, pods, the application doesn't start running until the kind of certificate exists, so it kind of behaves quite nicely with applications that kind of expect things to be there when they start and stuff. So yeah, I guess I'll just deploy the application. Hopefully, yeah, let's run. So we can see that the kind of certificate requests got created. And it got resolved with the certificate, and then the certificate gets kind of mounted to pod. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of going forward, we want to think about things like renewal. So since we're kind of not relying on Cert Manager's kind of certificate resource, it's kind of one layer below. It's CSI driver's responsibility to kind of handle things like renewal, which should be quite simple to do. I guess it kind of is a concern of just having long running Go routines kind of that understand what a duration of a certificate is. And it should be quite simple to kind of, if the CSI driver kind of goes down, when it comes back up again, it does like a local discovery on its kind of data directory to kind of build up again its kind of Go routines, kind of watch for renewal. But that's it, I guess, in the long and short of it. I think we're quite keen to kind of hear what you guys think of it. Is this sensible, I guess, going forward? What would you suggest? And yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, I think this is really great. I think this is exactly the kind of use cases that we anticipated for the CSI inline volumes feature. So this is really great.
Yeah, super cool to see. We have a CSI drivers page, which I can link to. If you want to, please add this driver there so people can discover it. And have you presented to SIG security or anyone from the auth side?
No, so that was a thing we did speak about. I quite possibly will kind of suggest it to them as well. To
Okay.
SIG. Yeah.
Is Cert Manager a Kubernetes sponsored project?
No, it's kind of self-sponsored by JetStack, I guess. But it's kind of there's yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, from the CSI and storage perspective, this is super cool. And like Michelle said, this is exactly the kind of use cases we had in mind. So it's really cool to see this light up. I'd like to see it on the drivers list as something that can be advertised to folks who are looking at CSI drivers. And Michelle, maybe we should segment our drivers page into persistent and ephemeral drivers to make it easier to kind of parse through now that we're getting more and more ephemeral drivers.
Yeah, I think it gets kind of hard because some drivers are both or claim to be both.
Okay. And then maybe we could have a third category.
Yeah, definitely that drivers table is getting pretty
big.
unwieldy. I think, would this be worth a blog post or something?
So from my perspective or our specific perspective, sure. Like, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think a good next step would be to present it to SIG Auth, SIG Security, whatever their name is, because they probably have a much better understanding of the use cases for this. And then if they are on board, then yeah, I think a blog post would be a good next step. It would demonstrate multiple things, security as well as these storage interfaces.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. All right, next on the agenda is Deep. Deep wants to discuss the call to dismount gracefully for detach. Deep, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, this could be a CSI discussion too. So if so, just let me know. We can take it to that forum. But the main, if you can just click on that link to the GitHub issue.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen. And okay, this one here.
Yes. The question basically was when we do a node unstage volume in CSI, there's no present requirement or recommendations around having to dismount the volume. So it seems it's not just CSI for some of the entry cases, like whether a plugin needs to dismount a volume or not is kind of unspecified, and we were trying to get some guidance around that. Like, should it be a requirement that when there's a graceful unstage of a volume from a node, should the plugin do a specific dismount and make sure all the data is flushed, or should that purely be the responsibility of the app to make sure that its data is getting flushed at regular intervals, and even if there's an ungraceful shutdown, it can recover appropriately? I think this mainly comes out of some observations around data getting cached and not getting flushed when pods are moving around. So that's what inspired this discussion, and we were looking for some guidance and thoughts.
So when you say dismount, you're not worried about garbage accumulating, because it seems obvious the garbage should not accumulate. You're worried about I/O loss.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the problem today is that with Linux, when drivers do an unmount, that automatically goes and flushes the data.
Yeah.
But with the way that Windows is implemented, the unmount doesn't actually unmount, and therefore there's no flushing of data.
Exactly.
And then we will go and detach the volume without having that data flushed to the file system.
Okay. So we've sort of assumed the Linux implementation in the wording of the spec says when, of course, data will get flushed when you unpublish something.
Yeah, and I
So-
think this bug was open to basically ask if we should clarify in the CSI spec that when you unpublish, you should actually also make sure the data is flushed.
Yeah, that seems like something that should be made explicit if it's not obvious.
Yeah,
It's kind of obvious to me.
yeah, my
Yeah.
personal opinion is that yes, it should be the driver's responsibility to flush when they unmount, because the way that we've written the CSI spec is that drivers are also responsible for the file system too.
True. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The driver's
Like
responsible
if
for
it
the
was
data.
different, if it was like Kubernetes was responsible for the file system, then I would say it should be Kubernetes' responsibility to unflush or to flush before calling unpublish on the driver. But in this case, since the driver is the one that creates the file system and the driver is the one that actually knows if it needs to mount or unmount, then it should be the driver's responsibility.
And I would suggest that it's actually at the unpublished time that everything should get flushed. By the time you get to unstage, there shouldn't be any cache data waiting to get written anywhere.
Makes sense. So I think the counterpoint that was raised by, I believe, James and others was what happens to should apps start to rely on this functionality, and if they rely too much, then they might not be able to deal with, a node crashing and ungraceful unpublished scenario. So
I think you answered your own question, which is, yeah, if you're worried about nodes going up in smoke, there's nothing CSI plugin can do to help you there.
right.
Yeah, even if the CSI plugin will flush things on unmount, that still doesn't solve the node crash case.
Okay, sounds good. So then
yeah, and I think
it's
it's also important to point out that in Kubernetes, it's very common to just kill containers. So it might not be possible for applications to really shut down gracefully.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you kill the container, as long as the process
I guess you could.
is terminated, that should force flush, at least on the Linux side.
I guess you should have. I mean, theoretically, you should implement signal handlers and term handlers to shut down gracefully if you're given that term signal.
Right.
Okay, so I think conclusion here is yes, and we should update the CSI spec accordingly.
Okay, I'll try to send out an update and we can discuss on that PR.
Awesome. Thank you, Deep. Next item is face-to-face meeting. We've had a number of kind of major questions and issues resolve or come up around the future of snapshots and data source and cloning and data populators. And in the past, when we've had a lot of big design questions, what has served us well is a face-to-face meeting. The last one was in 2018, so we're a little bit overdue for it. And so I'd like to propose doing another face-to-face meeting. We have a couple of options. One is at KubeCon in San Diego, which is happening between November 19 and 21. So we could set up something there. Another option was to potentially do something before that, maybe in October, and maybe on the East Coast. I was talking to Ben offline, and he was talking about potentially being able to host that.
Yeah. We have space here at NetApp and in RTP North Carolina that we could, depending on the date and the number of people. The main thing I need to figure out is how many people would come, and then we need to look at dates to see when I could get space. But we definitely have availability, and we can probably sort out the budget for food and those kinds of things as well.
So maybe let's get a kind of straw poll going for folks. Who would prefer to do it at KubeCon versus doing it on the East Coast in October? Yeah, you can just put a comment in the chat window as San Diego or East Coast, and then we can use that as a rough guideline for which one to pursue.
Chat window in a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, in the chat window in the Zoom meeting. Okay, any other votes? I'll give you all another 10 seconds.
I think there's 4 for San Diego.
Okay, so it sounds like we got 4 for San Diego, 1 for East Coast, and 2 for either. So San Diego seems to be where most of the folks on this call want to be, and I guess that makes sense since we have KubeCon coming up. So we'll go ahead and plan for something at San Diego and send out details about that.
But just to be clear, like there's not automatically space provided for that, right? Someone's still going to have to find a location and arrange it there. Just because we're all physically there for the KubeCon doesn't magically mean we have place to meet.
Yes, that is absolutely right. So this is all dependent on whether we're able to find space. I'm going to send out messages to the CNCF folks and see if we can get some space. If we are not able to do that, we'll circle back and figure out something.
I remember last time there was one company actually used their space. So that's also a choice, right?
Diamante or something.
Right, yes.
Paid for like a hotel conference room and the catering very generously.
Yeah. So we could use that as a backup option. We'll start with the CNCF. If there's anybody on the call who thinks their company might be able to sponsor something like a hotel room for probably a day, then that would be great. Feel free to reach out to me or Ben offline, and we'll take it from there. Any other comments, concerns, anything to talk about?
If it was going to be in San Diego, do you have a sense of which day it would be?
That's a good question. So what do folks think of the Monday before the conference?
I think that's when a lot of this kind of thing is supposed to happen.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like co-located events that happen that day. ideally, we want a full day for the conference. I prefer to have 2 days for the face-to-face meetings, but I don't want to eat into KubeCon time either. Another alternative would be to basically take Friday, so stay a day later, or maybe half days during the conference. But that gets tricky based on what sessions people are attending or giving.
On Monday, there is a contributor summit.
Yep.
And they could have a room for us, but I'm not sure if everybody here is going to be on the contributor summit.
Yeah, so if you are interested in attending, apply for that contributor summit. Just register for it, just in case. It'll be an interesting event regardless. And could you put in the chat window what kind of preference of day you have? We could use that as input for deciding.
Does anyone know, has the contributor summit registration closed or is still open?
I believe it's still open. I
okay.
registered for it like yesterday.
Okay.
Okay, seems pretty unanimous Monday. So we'll plan for something on Monday. Again, this depends on if we're able to get space. And we will send out more information about that. Any other questions, concerns, comments? All right, thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks.